My mother convinced my girlfriend to marry my brother. She told her, "He is stronger and better for you." I was very broken and sad when I returned to see what had happened. But I moved out of the city to build my life, and when I returned, everything was different. Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Terry Lawson from South Africa. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. My name's Alvin, and I guess you could say my story starts with the day everything I thought I had fell apart. Back then, I was just a guy in a small town, Harriston, the kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do. I was 23, working at the hardware store, stacking lumber and ringing up nails for folks who'd known me since I was in diapers. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and I had Lily. She was my world, dark hair that fell in waves, a laugh that made the air feel lighter. We'd been together 2 years, and I was saving up for a ring. Not a fancy one, just something to put on her finger and say, "You're mine, and I'm yours." That summer, I got a chance to make some extra cash. A buddy hooked me up with a 3-week gig hauling hay an hour away. It was hard work, sweat soaking my shirt, dust clogging my throat, but I pictured Lily's face every time I tossed a bale. I'd call her at night from a creaky payphone outside the bunkhouse, her voice soft and sweet through the static. "Miss you," she'd say, and I'd grin like an idiot, counting the days till I'd be back. I didn't know my own mom was counting down too, but for a different reason. When I rolled back into Harriston, my truck rattling down Main Street, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I'd made enough to start a savings account, maybe even take Lily somewhere nice. I stopped by her place first, a little shotgun house with peeling paint, flowers she'd planted blooming out front. But when I knocked, her mom answered, lips tight like she'd bitten a lemon. "She's not here, Alvin," she said, barely looking at me. "You'd best talk to your family." My gut twisted. I drove home, dust kicking up behind me, and walked into chaos. My mom, Margaret, was in the kitchen, flour on her apron, barking orders at my brother James like she was a general. James, all 6'3" of him, lounged against the counter, smirking. And then I saw it, the ring on his hand, a cheap gold band that didn't match the one I'd been dreaming of buying. "Where's Lily?" I asked, voice rougher than I meant it to be. Mom turned, wiping her hands like she was brushing me off. "She's with James now, Alvin. They're engaged. It's done." The room spun. I looked at James, his grin widening like he'd won some prize, and I swear I could have punched through the wall. "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, stepping closer. "Calm down," Mom snapped. "Lily needed a man, not a boy chasing pipe dreams. James is strong, steady. He's got a future. You're just, you." Her words hit like a slap. I'd spent my life trying to make her proud, fixing the porch when it sagged, working overtime so she wouldn't worry about bills. And James? He'd coasted, leaning on his size and charm, never lifting a finger unless it got him something. Now he had Lily. I stormed out, tires squealing as I drove to Lily's again. She was there this time, sitting on the porch swing, eyes red. "Alvin," she started, but I cut her off. "Is it true?" She nodded, twisting her hands. "Your mom, she said you'd never be enough. That James could take care of me." I didn't know what to do. "You didn't know what to do?" I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You could have waited 3 damn weeks. You could have called me." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and part of me wanted to hold her, tell her it'd be okay. But the other part, the part that saw James's smirk, heard Mom's voice, knew it was over. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't say anything back. I just walked away, her sobs fading behind me. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the walls I'd grown up in. Pictures of us as kids, me and James fishing, Mom smiling at a picnic, felt like lies. I wasn't their family anymore. I was the spare, the one they threw out when something shinier came along. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I packed a duffel bag, clothes, a toothbrush, the $50 I had left from the hay job. Mom was in the living room when I came down, knitting like nothing had happened. "Where you going?" she asked, not even looking up. "Anywhere but here," I said. She didn't stop me. James wasn't around, probably off gloating. I got in my truck and drove, the town shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew one thing. I'd never let them break me again. And that's how it started, the day I lost everything and decided I'd build something they couldn't touch. Leaving Harriston was like shedding a skin I didn't fit in anymore. My truck rattled down the highway, radio buzzing with static, and I didn't stop till the gas needle kissed empty. That landed me in Easton, a city big enough to swallow me whole, all concrete and noise compared to the quiet fields I'd left behind. I had $50, a duffel bag, and a fire in my chest that wouldn't quit. I wasn't sure what I was chasing, but I knew I couldn't go back. First few days, I slept in the truck, windows cracked, parked behind a diner where the cooks didn't care as long as I moved by dawn. I'd wake up stiff, neck aching, and wash my face in a gas station sink, splashing cold water till I felt human again. I needed a job fast. So I walked into every place with a help wanted sign, my boots scuffing sidewalks littered with gum wrappers and cigarette butts. Most folks took one look at my faded jeans and said, "We'll call you." They never did. Finally, I stumbled into a warehouse gig, loading crates onto trucks for $10 an hour. It was brutal. My arms burned after the first shift, sweat dripping into my eyes as I hauled boxes of car parts or whatever else they shipped. The foreman, a guy named Rick with a voice like gravel, barked orders nonstop. "Move it, new kid," he'd yell, and I'd grit my teeth, picturing James's smirk every time I wanted to quit. I wasn't strong like him, not yet, but I'd be damned if I let that stop me. Nights were the worst. I'd crash in a cheap motel room I rented by the week, walls thin enough to hear the guy next door coughing up a lung. I'd lie there, staring at water stains on the ceiling, thinking about Lily. Her face would sneak in, those soft eyes, that laugh, and I'd wonder if she was happy with James. Then I'd hear Mom's voice, "You're just you," and I'd roll over, punching the pillow till the thought shut up. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. One day, I saw a flyer taped to a pole outside the warehouse, night classes, learn a trade, build a future. It was at the community college a few blocks over. I'd never been big on school, barely scraped through high school, but something about it stuck. Maybe it was the word future. I signed up for a basic computer course, figuring it couldn't hurt. First night, I sat in a room full of tired people like me, all hunched over clunky old PCs. The teacher, Mr. Hayes, was this wiry guy with glasses sliding down his nose. "You don't need to be smart," he said. "You just need to show up." I could do that. That's where I met Sarah. She was in the back row, tapping away at her keyboard like she'd been born with it in her hands. Short brown hair, freckles across her nose, and a way of smiling that didn't feel forced. We got paired up for some dumb assignment, making a spreadsheet, and I fumbled through it, cursing under my breath. "Relax," she said, leaning over to fix my mess. "It's not brain surgery." Her fingers flew across the keys, and I just watched, feeling like a kid who'd wandered into the wrong room. After class, we grabbed coffee at a diner across the street, black for me, cream and sugar for her. She told me she'd grown up in Easton, worked as a cashier but wanted more. "I'm not staying behind a register forever," she said, stirring her cup. "What about you?" I didn't know how to answer. "Just trying to figure it out," I mumbled, and she nodded like she got it. We started talking after class most nights about the course, then dumb stuff like movies or the best cheap eats in town. She had this way of making me forget the ache I carried around. Work got steadier. Rick stopped yelling so much, even clapped me on the shoulder once and said, "You're not half bad, kid." I saved enough to ditch the motel for a tiny apartment, peeling paint, a mattress on the floor, but mine. Sarah came over one night with a pizza, laughing at my empty place. "You need a chair or something," she teased, plopping down cross-legged on the carpet. We ate straight from the box, grease staining our fingers, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Not love, not yet, but a crack of light in the dark. Then came the break. A guy at the warehouse mentioned his cousin's startup needed help, some tech outfit building apps or gadgets, I wasn't sure. "They want grunts who'll work hard," he said. I showed up in my cleanest shirt, palms sweaty, and talked to a skinny guy in a hoodie named Tim. He asked what I could do, and I said, "Anything you teach me." Guess that was enough. He hired me as an assistant, running errands, hauling gear, whatever they needed. Pay was better, and I got to watch these brainy types code and argue over stuff I barely understood. I soaked it up, asking questions when they'd let me. By the end of that first year in Easton, I wasn't the same guy who'd left Harrison. My hands were calloused. My bank account had a few $100, and I had Sarah, well, not had her, but she was there, steady as a heartbeat. One night, walking her home from class, she slipped her hand in mine, casual like it was nothing. I froze, then squeezed back, my pulse thumping. "You're doing good, Alvin," she said, looking up at me. "Don't stop." I didn't plan to. I'd lost everything once, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. But as I walked back to my place, city lights buzzing overhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start. Something bigger was coming. I could taste it. Easton stopped feeling like a maze after a while. It turned into home, piece by piece. I'd been there a few years by then, and life had a rhythm. Work, Sarah, and this quiet fire in me that kept pushing. That startup gig I'd stumbled into? It wasn't just errands anymore. Tim, the skinny guy in the hoodie who'd hired me, started trusting me with more, testing apps, running numbers, even sitting in on meetings where they tossed ideas around like ping-pong balls. I didn't get half of it at first, but I listened, scribbled notes on napkins, and figured it out. Turns out, I was good at seeing the big picture, how the pieces fit, what people might want. Tim noticed. One day, he pulled me aside, coffee breath and all. "Alvin, you're wasted hauling boxes," he said. "We're scaling up, new office, investors, the works. I need someone to manage ops. You in?" I blinked, waiting for the punchline, but he was serious. Operations meant keeping the chaos in line, shipments, schedules, budgets. I'd never done it, but I'd watched Rick run the warehouse like a drill sergeant. I could learn. "Yeah," I said, heart thumping. "I'm in." That's how it started. Me climbing, step by sweaty step. The company grew fast. Some app we built hitting big with college kids, then offices, then overseas. I worked late, slept less, and loved it. Sarah stuck with me through it. We'd been dating a year when I asked her to move in. Nothing fancy, just my little apartment with a couch now instead of just a mattress. She said yes, hauling in a box of books and a coffee pot, grinning like we'd won something. A year after that, I proposed. No big scene, just us on the fire escape, city lights flickering below, and a ring I'd saved 6 months for. She cried, nodded, and that was that. We got married at City Hall, her in a white dress she'd found on sale, me in a suit that pinched at the shoulders. No crowd, no fuss, just a couple friends from work and her sister snapping pics. I liked it that way. Quiet. Ours. Soon after, she got pregnant, and 9 months later, we had Mia, tiny, loud, with Sarah's freckles already dotting her nose. 2 years after that came Ethan, all chubby cheeks and fists. I'd come home bone-tired, and they'd climb on me, giggling, and suddenly the day didn't feel so heavy. By then, I was CEO. Yeah, me, Alvin from Harrison, the kid who'd stacked lumber, running a company worth millions. Tim stepped back to tinker with code, and the board picked me to lead. I didn't flaunt it, kept my truck, wore the same boots, let Sarah handle the spotlight stuff like interviews or fancy dinners. She was good at it, charming suits with her quick laugh, while I stayed behind the scenes, making sure the machine ran smooth. We bought a house, not a mansion, just a brick place with a yard for the kids, but we didn't tell anyone who didn't need to know. I liked it secret. Felt safer. But the past wasn't gone. It'd creep in late at night, when the house was still and Sarah's breathing was soft beside me. I'd see Lily's face, hear Mom's voice cutting me down, picture James flexing like he owned the world. I kept a box in the closet, old photos, a letter from Mom I'd never opened, a snapshot of me and Lily at the county fair, her head on my shoulder. I'd pull it out sometimes, stare at it, then shove it back. Sarah caught me once, asked what it was. Nothing, I lied, and she let it go, but her eyes said she knew. We were happy, me, Sarah, the kids, but I wasn't whole. Not yet. I'd built this life, brick by brick, and it was good, but there was a hole where Harrison used to be. I didn't miss them, not really, but I wondered. Did they ever think about me? Did Lily regret it? Did Mom care she'd lost a son? I'd push it down, focus on Mia's drawings or Ethan's babbling, but it lingered. Then the call came. I was in the office, papers spread across my desk, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Harrison area code. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me. "Alvin," a voice said, gruff, familiar. Uncle Pete, Dad's brother. Your dad's gone. Heart attack. Funeral Saturday. My throat locked up. Dad hadn't been perfect, quiet, let Mom run the show, but he'd never cut me like she did. I mumbled something about being there and hung up, staring at the wall. Sarah found me like that when she got home, kids trailing behind her. What's wrong? She asked, setting Ethan on the floor. I told her, voice flat. You don't have to go, she said, hand on my arm. But I shook my head. I do. Not for Mom, not for James or Lily, for Dad, maybe, or for me. I needed to see it through. That night, I couldn't sleep. I slipped out of bed, dug out that box again. The letter from Mom was still sealed, postmarked years back. I tore it open, hands shaking. Alvin, come home. We miss you. James and Lily are struggling, help us. No sorry, no nothing, just a demand, like always. I crumpled it, tossed it in the trash. They didn't get to need me now. Friday, I packed a bag, suit, tie, nothing flashy. Sarah hugged me tight at the door, Mia clinging to my leg. Be careful, Sarah said, I searching mine. I will, I promised. Driving out of Easton, kids waving from the porch, I felt the old ache stir. Harrison was calling me back, and I wasn't sure what I'd find. But I knew one thing. I wasn't that broke kid anymore. Whatever waited there, I'd face it standing tall. The drive back to Harrison felt like crossing a line I'd drawn in the dirt years ago. My truck hummed along the highway, fields blurring past, and every mile tightened the knot in my gut. I hadn't been back since I peeled out at 23, tailpipe spitting dust, and now here I was, 35, with a life they didn't know about. The radio crackled some old country song about lost love, and I switched it off. Didn't need the reminder. I rolled into town late Friday, sky gray and heavy like it might rain. Harrison hadn't changed much, same sagging porches, same gas station with the busted sign. I pulled into a motel on the edge of town, a squat brick place with flickering neon. The clerk barely glanced up as I paid cash for a room. Bed creaked, sheets smelled like bleach, but it'd do. I dropped my bag, stared at myself in the cracked mirror, lines around my eyes, hair a little thinner. I wasn't that kid anymore, but I still felt him rattling around inside me. Saturday morning, I put on the suit, dark, simple, nothing flashy, and drove to the church. It was the same one I'd gone to as a kid, white paint peeling, steeple leaning like it was tired. Cars lined the lot, folks in black milling around, voices low. I parked at the back, took a breath, and stepped out. Heads turned, old neighbors, cousins I hadn't seen in years, but no one said much. Yes, I was a ghost to them now. Inside, the pews were packed, air thick with flowers and murmurs. I slid into a seat near the back, next to some guy I vaguely remembered from high school. Then I saw them, Mom, James, Lily, up front, like royalty holding court. Mom's hair was grayer, pulled tight in a bun, her face sharp as ever. James sat broad-shouldered, suit straining at the seams, looking bored. And Lily, she was thinner, eyes dull, hands folded in her lap. Time hadn't been kind, but I didn't feel sorry. Not yet. A woman leaned over, Mrs. Carter, who'd taught me Sunday school, and whispered, "They stuck you back here, huh?" Typical Margaret. I shrugged, kept my mouth shut. I could feel Mom's eyes sweep the room, but she didn't spot me. James muttered something to Lily, and she nodded, blank as a doll. They thought I was nothing, some broke nobody who'd crawled back for crumbs. Let them. The service started, preacher droning about Dad's life, how he'd worked the farm, loved his family. I barely listened. Dad had been quiet, always in Mom's shadow, but he'd taught me to fish, fixed my bike when I crashed it. He never stood up for me, though, not once. I wondered if he'd tried at the end. Then Uncle Pete got up, clearing his throat, holding a paper. "Alvin," he said, voice carrying, "your dad wanted you to read this." Heads turned, whispers rippling. Mom's face twitched, James frowned, Lily's eyes flicked up. I stood, legs steady, and walked to the front. The aisle felt a mile long, every step echoing on the wood floor. Pete handed me the paper, clapped my shoulder, and I faced the crowd. Dad's handwriting stared back at me, shaky, slanted, real. "To my boy, Alvin," I started, voice low but clear. "I wasn't the father you deserved. I let things happen I shouldn't have. But I watched you from afar, heard about your life, your work. You made something out of nothing, and I'm proud. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. My throat tightened, but I kept going. You're stronger than I ever was. Don't let anyone tell you different. The room was dead quiet. I glanced up. Mom's lips were a thin line. James shifted like he might bolt. Lily stared at her hands. I could have stopped there, let it hang, but something in me snapped loose. I brought my family today, I said, looking to the back. Sarah, kids, come on up. A rustle, then footsteps. Sarah walked down the aisle, Mia and Ethan trailing her. She wore a black dress, simple but sharp, hair pulled back, and the kids looked like little adults. Mia in a skirt, Ethan in a tie. I'd nodded myself. They reached me, Sarah's hand brushing mine, and I turned back to the crowd. You could have heard a pin drop. Mom's face went white, like she'd seen a ghost. James's jaw dropped, eyes darting between me and the kids. Lily blinked, slow, like she was waking up. The rest of the church buzzed, whispers, gasps, but I didn't care. I folded Dad's letter, tucked it in my pocket, and said, "That's all." Then I led my family back to our seats, Sarah's fingers laced with mine, Mia whispering, "Was that okay, Daddy?" I nodded, throat too tight to talk. The rest of the service blurred. Hymns, prayers, people filing past Dad's casket. I stayed put, watching Mom twist her handkerchief, James glare at the floor, Lily sneak glances my way. They hadn't said a word, but I could feel it, their world tilting, cracking. Good. When it ended, folks spilled outside, air damp with the rain that had finally started. I stood under the awning, Sarah beside me, kids playing with a pebble they'd found. I thought that'd be it, just a look, a moment, then I'd go. But then I saw them coming, Mom, James, Lily, cutting through the crowd, faces I hadn't faced in 12 years. My pulse kicked up, and I squared my shoulders. Whatever they had to say, I was ready. The rain was coming down steady now, tapping on the church awning like it was keeping time. I stood there, Sarah close, the kids kicking at puddles a few feet away. The crowd thinned out, folks hurrying to their cars, but I didn't move. My eyes were locked on Mom, James, and Lily pushing through, their faces tight like they'd rehearsed this. 12 years since I'd left, and here they were, about to say something I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. My hands balled up in my pockets, but I kept my chin up. They didn't get to see me flinch. Mom reached me first, her black dress soaked at the hem, eyes sharp as ever. "Alvin," she said, voice clipped, like she was calling me in for supper. "You should have told us you were coming. No hello, no nothing." Just that old tone, like I'd inconvenienced her. James loomed behind, arms crossed, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. Lily hung back, clutching an umbrella, looking smaller than I remembered. "Told you," I said, keeping it even. "Didn't think you'd care." Her mouth twitched. "Of course we care. Your family." She glanced at Sarah and the kids, then back at me, like she was sizing up a puzzle she couldn't solve. "What's all this? The suit, the wife, the children?" I let the question hang, rain drumming between us. Sarah stepped closer, her hand on my arm, steady like always. "This is my life," I said finally. "Built it myself. No thanks to you." James snorted, breaking his silence. "What's that supposed to mean? You show up after years, acting like some big shot, reading Dad's letter like you're better than us." His voice had that edge, the one he'd used to cut me down when we were kids. "Where you been, huh? Where you left me?" I shot back, staring him down. "Out in the cold, while you took everything I had." He flinched, just a flicker, but I saw it. Mom jumped in, waving a hand. "That's not fair, Alvin. We did what was best, for Lily, for the family. You were young, chasing dreams that wouldn't pan out." James stepped up. "Stepped up?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "He stepped on me, Mom. You pushed him to it. Told Lily I'd never be enough, handed her over like I was trash. Don't act like it was noble." Lily spoke then, voice shaky, stepping out from under her umbrella. "Alvin, I didn't mean to hurt you. Your mom, she made it sound like you'd be gone forever, like you didn't care." I was scared. Her eyes were wet, but I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. "I've thought about you every day." I looked at her, really looked. The girl I'd loved was still there, buried under years of regret, but it didn't soften me. "You could have called," I said. Could have waited 3 weeks. You chose Lily. Live with it. She dropped her gaze, water dripping off her chin. James shifted, jaw tight. So what? You're rich now? Big man with a fancy job? Come here to rub it in our faces? CEO, I said, flat. Build a company from nothing. Didn't come to rub it in, just came for Dad. You're the ones who made it about me. Mom's eyes widened, just for a second, before she smoothed it over. Well, she said, forcing a smile, that's impressive. We always knew you had it in you, didn't we, James? He grunted, not selling it. Maybe you could help us out. Things haven't been easy. James lost his job, the farm's struggling. Family helps family. There it was the ask. Same old mom, turning a knife into a handshake. I saw red for a split second, memories flashing. Her voice in the kitchen, you're just you? James smirking as he slipped that ring on, Lily walking away. I took a breath, let it out slow. You didn't help me, I said. When I was sleeping in my truck, eating gas station sandwiches, where were you? Oh, right, writing letters begging after you'd already cut me loose. That's not, Mom started, but I cut her off. You made your choices. I made mine. We're done. I turned, nodding to Sarah. She called the kids, Mia and Ethan scampering over, oblivious to the weight of it all. Let's go, I said, and we started for the truck. Mom's voice chased me, shrill now. Alvin, wait. We're sorry, okay? We didn't know. I kept walking, rain soaking my suit, Sarah's hand in mine. James shouted something, cursing, probably, but it blurred into the storm. Lily didn't say another word, and I didn't look back to check. The truck door slammed shut behind us, Mia giggling about her wet socks, Ethan asking if we could get burgers. Sarah squeezed my knee, quiet, letting me breathe. As we pulled out, I caught a glimpse in the rear view, Mom standing there, arms limp, James kicking at the mud, Lily under her umbrella like a shadow. They looked small, lost, like the rain had washed away whatever power they'd had over me. I didn't feel good about it, not happy, not mean, just free. Like a weight I'd carried too long finally slipped off. Dad? Mia piped up from the back. Were those people mad at you? Nah, I said, forcing a smile. Just surprised, kiddo. It's been a while. She nodded, satisfied, and started chattering to Ethan. Sarah glanced at me, eyes soft. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, and for once, I meant it. The road stretched ahead, Harrison fading behind us, and I knew I'd never come back. They'd seen what I'd made, and that was enough. The rain followed us out of Harrison, streaking the windshield as I drove. The truck's wipers squeaked, Mia and Ethan chattered in the back, and Sarah sat quiet beside me, her hand resting on my leg. I kept my eyes on the road, lights blurring through the wet, but my mind was still at that church, Mom's pinched face, James's glare, Lily's umbrella drooping like a wilted flower. I didn't say much, just let the miles roll by, the hum of the engine filling the space where words didn't fit. We stopped at a diner an hour out, some hole in the wall with neon buzzing in the window. The kids were starving, and Ethan had been begging for burgers since we left. Inside, it smelled like grease and coffee, the kind of place where the waitress calls you hon, and the booths are patched with tape. Mia slid in next to me, swinging her legs, while Ethan climbed into Sarah's lap, smearing ketchup on his shirt 5 minutes in. You're a mess, buddy, I said, ruffling his hair, and he grinned, teeth full of fries. Watching them, laughing over dumb stuff like who'd finish first, I felt my chest loosen up. This was mine. Nobody could take it. Sarah caught my eye across the table, her smile soft. You're quiet, she said, wiping Ethan's hands with a napkin. Still thinking about it? Yeah, I admitted, poking at my fries. Not them, though, not really. Just how it's over. She nodded, like she got it, and didn't push. That's how she was. Knew when to let me stew. We finished up, paid the bill, and piled back into the truck. The rain had eased to a drizzle, sky bruising purple as night crept in. The kids dozed off halfway home, heads lolling against each other, and Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. Proud of you, she murmured, half asleep. I didn't answer, just squeezed her hand, but it stuck with me. Back in Easton, pulling into our driveway felt like landing after a long fall. The house glowed warm, brick, simple ours. I carried Ethan in, his little arms limp around my neck, while Sarah scooped up Mia. We tucked them in, their rooms messy with toys and crayon scribbles, and I stood there a minute, watching them breathe. They didn't know what Harrison meant, didn't carry that weight. Good. I'd made damn sure of that. Downstairs, Sarah poured us coffee, and we sat on the couch, mugs steaming. The quiet settled in, thick but not heavy. "You gonna tell me what happened?" she asked, curling her legs under her. So I did everything. Dad's letter, the way it hit me, how Mom begged, James cursed, Lily just stood there. I told her about the rain, the walk away, how it didn't feel like winning, just letting go. "Did you want to forgive them?" she asked, sipping her coffee. I thought about it, staring at the steam curling up. "No," I said finally. "Not because I hate them. I don't, not anymore. Just, they don't get a piece of this. What we've got, it's ours. They lost their shot." She smiled, small but real, and set her mug down. "Then that's that," she said, leaning into me. We sat like that a while, TV flickering some late-night show we didn't watch, and I felt the last knot in my gut unwind. I'd faced them, stood tall, and walked away. It was done. Next morning, I was up early. Habit, I guess. The kids were still out, house quiet except for the coffee pot gurgling. I went to the closet, dug out that old box I'd kept too long. The pictures spilled out, me and James with fishing poles, Mom at a picnic, Lily laughing at the fair. I flipped through them, waiting for the sting, but it didn't come. Just memories, faded like the paper. Then I saw it. The crumpled letter from Mom I'd trashed back in Harrison. I'd fished it out before we left, shoved it in my bag. Why, I don't know. I smoothed it out, read it again. "Come home. We miss you. Help us." Same old tune. But there was something else, tucked in the envelope, a smaller note I'd missed. Dad's writing, shaky like the tribute. "Alvin, I left you the old watch. It's not much, but it's yours. I should have given you more. Forgive me." My breath caught. The watch, his dad's, a beat-up silver thing he'd worn every day. I hadn't seen it at the funeral, figured Mom kept it. Guess he'd hidden it for me. I sat there, turning the note over in my hands. Dad hadn't fought for me alive, but he'd tried at the end. It wasn't enough to fix it all, but it was something. I tucked the note back, slid the box under the bed. Not gone, just out of sight. Maybe I'd get the watch later, maybe not. Didn't matter right now. Sarah came down, hair messy, robe tied loose. "You're up early," she said, pouring coffee. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, and this time it was true. "Want to take the kids to the park later?" She grinned. "Only if you push the swings." Deal. That afternoon, we did. Parked down the street, sun breaking through the clouds. Mia squealed as I pushed her high. Ethan toddled after a butterfly, Sarah laughing on a bench. I caught my reflection in a puddle. Older, steadier, a guy who'd made it. Harrison was miles behind, a shadow I didn't need to chase anymore. I'd built this family, home, a life, and it was enough. Driving back, kids singing off-key in the back, I glanced in the rearview. They were my future, not that town, not those people. I smiled, small but real, and turned up the radio. The road ahead was clear, and I was good with that. Well, that's my story, how I lost it all, built it back, and found my way. Took a lot of miles and a few scars to get here, but I'd do it again for what I've got now. What about you? Ever had to walk away from something or someone to find what's real? I'd love to hear your take. Drop it in the comments section. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share this story with your friends. See you soon in our next story.